Hey everyone, it's Sean Smith from BlackPush and Newbie Corp. I'm reaching out to you today because we have a lot of exciting events coming up, and I don't want you to miss out on any of them. The first one is starting off on May 18th. If you're a pastor and you serve in the Gwinnett County area, we want you to be there. So let's be a part of dialogue. I don't care whether you've seen some of the things we wrote on Facebook and you agree or you disagree with us. Let's have dialogue. We invite you on May 18th to meet us at Tabernacle International Church in Lawrenceville, Georgia, where the pastor is Pastor Lisa Musser and Apostle Musser. And they're going to be hosting us from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. So we invite you there for a collective dialogue on social injustice, how we can impact our community, and how we can serve in our community while still being spiritual leaders. So please come out and join us. And it doesn't stop there. If you're a youth between the age of 13 to 18 and you want to learn how you can continue to make an impact in your community, join us virtually on May 22nd. You can join via our Facebook, via Zoom, where we'll be hosting the event, where we'll have different panelists like DA Patsy Austin Gaston from Gwinnett County. We have Colonel Hunton, who's from the Paulding County Sheriff's Department. We have the Honorable Judge Angela Brown from Cobb County Superior Court, and many more panelists, including a surprise panelist. So you don't want to miss out, and that'll be a dialogue that you'll have, that you'll be able to hear them speak, and not only hear them speak, but you'll be able to speak to them and ask them questions about how they got to where they are. So join us if you're a youth to continue the conversation in our Youth in Action seminar. That'll be hosted on May 22nd from the hours of 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. So join us there. But if you're a business owner and you want to network and you want to meet other business owners like yourself, join us on May 23rd, where we'll be hosting our wine sip and taste, as well as our painting with a twist right afterwards. But it'll be a networking event. We have people flying in from out of the state to talk to businesses about how to grow your business, how to do marketing for your business. We have a whole different array of different events going on, so you want to join us there. And if you need more information on any of these things, you can go to our website right here at www.blackpush.org or www.newbiecorp.org. You guys join us. We have so much going on. Don't be a part of the conversation from the outside, but be a part of the conversation from the inside. We look forward to seeing you there. Welcome back. Hey, Leslie. We're back. I know it's been like a few weeks we've been off, right?
Yeah, like 2, I think.
More than 2. Probably what, 3 weeks? 3 weeks? But it's exciting to be back. Thank you everybody who's tuning in, who's watching online today. Usually, as you guys know, we usually have special guests. Today, our special guests are us. We are your special guests. But we're going to talk today, Leslie. First off, I do want to just remind everybody, even though we just had the little ad posted up, that you are getting ready to actually host your very first event. It is our Youth in Action seminar, correct?
Shifting the focus.
Shifting the focus Youth in Action seminar, Shifting the Focus seminar. Tell me just real quickly, what is the seminar going to be about?
Yeah, so our seminar is going to be about kind of showing kids ages 13 to 18 about their options for career paths. There's obviously more to life than being like a viral star, which is what everybody wants to be right now. And we're trying to show them that there's sustainable work out there that doesn't risk your body.
Right. And the thing about it too, I think a big part of why we're doing this too is that we've gotten, a lot of people feel like we've gotten justice for George Floyd, and they see the conviction we got against the officer, and they feel like, okay, we've accomplished something, right?
Yeah.
And our message to youth is that we still have a long way to go. We still have a lot to do, and they still play a big part of it. So I think that that's the reason why we call it Shifting the Focus, because it's time for us to kind of not lose focus of what we've done and do more.
Just pivot a little bit.
So just a few things that we want to just talk about today, and the reason why I brought Leslie on with me is because Leslie's like my policy guru. So every op-ed that you guys get from our organization, she plays a huge part in that. And she, even though we don't always agree on our opinions or the way we do things, we always present the appearance of agreement. One of the things that was interesting is that I want everybody to kind of understand like how we do things in our office, and that's the reason why I want you here as well. So we have, I'm obviously the founder, I guess, of BlackPush, and we do have a lot of different events where we have collective conversations, right? Do we not, like, every day? Roughly
Yes.
every day,
We have team meetings at the end of every day, pretty much.
and sometimes in the middle of the day.
Yes.
And I want to point that out because a lot of times people don't understand like where our thinking comes from. In most of those meetings, though, a lot of people sometimes don't agree with me. They have gotten me to change my opinion on a few things. I think even recently we was talking about racism
The
and
definition of racism.
the definition of racism. And I think we had like an hour-long conversation. And it's interesting because even this week I had a post that went out, and the post stated along the lines, I think it was, I mean, I'm quoting myself, it stated something along the lines that that you can't remove racism from the heart of every American, but we can prevent those who are racist from being in positions of basically position of powers, right? And people have gone off. Like literally, we posted that yesterday, and it has not even been 24 hours. And even I'm throwing disco on this too. Like it hasn't even much been 24 hours, and we have over 204 comments, and I think like 180 some involvements, and most of them are saying, you know, very racist things, and taking what I said out of context, and it probably could be reworded a little differently, but I'm not saying that every American is racist, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that when a person is racist, you can't remove it from, we don't have the power per se to remove or change a person's heart, right? But what we can do is that when we recognize racism in other people or prejudice in other people, we can make sure that those people and those prejudices and those racisms don't get a voice, don't get a voice in our Congress, don't get a voice in our Senate, don't get a voice in our mayor's office, don't get a voice in our police departments, don't get a voice on judge benches, don't get a voice in the DA's office, right? That's what the comment was referring to. But like talking about the word racism, like let's talk about your opinion of it, because everybody obviously has heard my opinion of it.
Okay, so first and foremost, my background, I'm a sociology student. At the end of the day, I study society, ins and outs. And as we define it in my classes where we talk about how race affects class and gender and all of that good stuff, we kind of define it as like having that ability to impress upon those you're oppressing systemic like factors that impact their lives for generations. That's how we kind of navigate our conversations around it. So that's how I see it.
And the funny thing is that I just really had a discussion a few days ago. I had a few pastors that visited with me, and we had a discussion about this word racism and about what it means to me versus what it means to them. And I'm Black, they're right. The thing that's interesting is that when we hear the word racism, people automatically assume that definitely when it's coming from African American, that we're trying to say that it's a black and white issue, right? And I think I had this argument with you guys this week. Like, I believe racism affects every race, right? I believe that there's some black people who are racist against white people. And I believe that there's some white people who are racist against Hispanic people. There's a black people who are racist against Hispanic people. Hispanic people are racist against black people. Like, racism is not just defined by black and white, right? We see it in the Asian population. Like, I don't get how you see an Asian person on the side of the street, an elderly Asian person getting beat up, and instead of you trying to help them, you pull out your phone and you start recording it, but yet you don't lift a hand and try to make sure that the person who's beating them up don't play a part, like don't pull them off. You know what I'm saying? So racism, like I use this example, right? I drive through certain parts of Georgia, right? And there's certain cities in Georgia, and I mean, as a black person, I look at when I pull up and I start to see people going into the gas station, I'm like, no, I'll push this to the 20 miles and I'll go to the next gas station, right? Why? Just because of the fact that in my head, I mean, we've been taught to a certain aspect that if they look a certain way, if they talk a certain way, if they have a certain kind of slang, then those are places that you don't want to be, right? And that's a perception that has been given to us, and that's not always the case. Like I was telling somebody once before, one of these particular neighborhoods I went into, and I automatically prejudged them based upon the way the area looked, the way the people look who were going in there. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a bad experience. Let me just get my gas. I ain't got but 2 miles empty. Let me just get my gas and go, right? And I walked into the gas station. I went to get something to eat. And when I walked over to the food place, this guy was extremely nice. Like the nicest person I've ever met in my life. And I'm not calling him white, black. He was extremely nice, right? And when I left there, I had to like rebuke myself and be like, shame on you for even like prejudging the situation before I even go through it, right? And I told the guy, like, at that time I was working for a restaurant, I was like, man, listen, if I can just pack you up and bring you back to where I'm at and have you run at one of my restaurants, you'll make a huge impact. And that's what I mean by when I say, like, racism can't be embedded within our system, because when we look at the system, right? I know that about 2 weeks ago, Joe Biden gave his, we're not calling the State of the Union because it wasn't a State of the Union, but he gave his first speech to Congress, right? And Representative or Senator, Senator Tim Scott gave the rebuttal. And in his rebuttal, he literally said that America's not a racist nation. That's not true. I mean, we can disagree on a lot of things, but I think that everybody can agree that there's racism in America. And when I say that, I'm not just referring to black on white or white officers killing black people. I mean, when we have a system where you have a community, right? I'm not going to call this community out. I know a community right now, whole county, that has decided that because they don't want homeless in the area, that they're not going to build a homeless shelter because they don't want homeless in the area. And this is a white county, right? A majority white, and the majority of the people who are homeless in that county are white, right?
Yeah.
And the thing is that they don't want to build a homeless shelter, put one up, because everybody's afraid of, if you bring that shelter into their community, then you bring the people who are homeless into the community as well. That's, to me, a form of racism, right? You can't be, I don't know.
It's a form of classism. So again, this goes back to like everything I study. It's a form of classism to assume that people who are homeless, like obviously temporarily, hopefully, people that are homeless, everyone assumes like, oh, they're going to rob me. They're only looking for drugs. Every time I give them money, they're going to go buy drugs. And like, it kind of boils down to, you should just be giving them money out of the kindness of your heart, because they have a hard life.
Right.
At the end of the day, like, what is the word I'm looking for? At the end of the day, it's a form of classism, but classism evolved through racism.
Right. And even we were talking about the other day, we used the word prejudice, and people were like, well, there's a difference between prejudice and racism. There's absolutely a difference. But if you look up the Webster's Dictionary of Racism, it says that it begins with prejudice, right? And that's the reason why when we look at our criminal justice system, let's be honest, racism is deeply embedded within our criminal justice system. When you look at the fact that black or minority person is charged almost twice as long, right, as a person who may be white with the same charges, there's something wrong with that, right? And that's the reason why I know here at BlackPush, we're pushing something called the Fair Justice Act, right? And this is something that we're putting together. And we want to start in Georgia, hopefully. But let's talk about that a little bit, right? So some of the key points in the Fair Justice Act are...
So some of the key points are getting funding for ex-offenders and current offenders like that are in the system, as well as bias training for DAs, judges, and police officers. We are also looking to amend POST by making bias training and de-escalation training more mandatory, as well as adding more psychologists and therapists to the force so that they can go with crisis calls. And then we are also looking to amend the courtroom, the way that it's run. We want more transparency. And finally, we are hoping to either eradicate the grand jury system or make it even for everybody, because if you don't know, in the state of Georgia, the grand jury indictment process allows the officers who have committed a crime to speak on their own behalf and have testimony.
Not speak on have representation.
They can
have representation. They can't be in the room, but they can have somebody representing them in the room. Right.
Right. So I misspoke. They have representation, and the average person is not allowed to have that representation
in the grand jury process. And when we go to bias training, right? So I think bias goes back to the when we talk about prejudice, right? That some people don't even So the funny thing about racism, and this is very interesting, right? I've learned that the people who think they're not racist are usually the ones that need to sit down and evaluate themselves the most, right? And really have a hard look at themselves. So I remember one time I worked for a company, and literally the person who I worked for, I felt like he had racist tendencies. Very nice person, will give you the shirt off his back, literally. Very nice person, but I feel like he had racial tendencies, or racist tendencies, sorry. And one time in particular, I was sitting in his office, and he asked me the question. He said that if there was 10 black men in the room and 5 white men in the room, and one of them was accused of, like, one person in that room was accused of robbing somebody. Who would you point to? And I said, well, naturally, the 1 to 10 white men, because there's 10 of them, 5 of the black people, so there's more of them, right? And he looked at me and he said, Sean, be honest with yourself, right? And that moment where, again, reminded me where even though a person is nice, or even though we think that just because we donate to the NAACP or we donate to Black Lives Matters, I mean, if African American comes to your neighborhood and you're upset, or you're trying to figure out how they made it through the homeowners association, or a white person comes to a black neighborhood and moves into a black neighborhood, and we're upset or trying to say that they're trying to move. Man, come on, like, that's racism, regardless of how you.
Yeah, like you're thinking of like the phrase like, "Oh, there goes the neighborhood."
Right.
And that's inherent racism.
But the problem is that it's that people who are racist don't recognize they're racist.
And they won't, because it's so indoctrinated in the culture.
And I have to be honest with myself too, as I begin to evaluate this. I've had some racial tendencies, right?
Mm-hmm.
I prejudge people by where they in the past, by where they have come from, or I would look at how they look today, and I would, you know what I'm saying? And all that could be a form, because definitely when it impacts them, right?
Mm-hmm.
When it impacts how I treat them, when it impacts how I look at them, when it impacts how, if I'm willing to communicate or hold a conversation with them,
Yeah.
if it impacts, like, if they're walking past me, I have to turn like this, and you know what I'm saying? Like, all those things could be, again, we go back. And one of the things for me, like, what I think what offends me the most a lot of times is when we post stuff on Facebook. I mean, just because people see our name as BlackPush, or they see us putting a picture of Obama up, or they see us putting a picture of Malcolm X up, or Fred Hammond up, or anything like that, right? They just automatically assume that we just only care about Black lives, right?
Yeah.
I'm one of those people. I'm a Black person who believes that all lives matter, right? All lives do matter, but I also believe that I'm dealing with the house that's on fire, right?
Yeah.
And right now, the African American community is being hit in a totally different way than other communities. The Asian American community is being hit in a totally different way than other communities. The Hispanic community is being hit in a way. And the thing that is interesting is that I want people to understand, like, racism is not just defined to America. I have been to countries and islands and territories, and I've been a whole bunch of places where they were streaming. I was in Paris one time, and a taxi cab driver literally would not give me a ride. Would not give me a ride and told me to go see the guy behind him, and he wasn't doing anything, right? Yeah. And there was a white couple that came up right behind me, and he took them. And I mean, racism is not just defined to just America.
Not at all. I mean, you kind of have to go back to what all of these countries were founded on, what they spent over 400 years doing, not including, slavery, but I'm talking like the whole fact that at the end of the day, a lot of these countries, like France, for instance, they're Islamophobic, but Islam is the second most practiced religion in their country.
Right.
So it just kind of boils down to understanding the area you're in when you go out places. Like, it's not safe. It's not as safe for me to travel as it is for you, despite the fact that we are both minorities. So, like, if I was going back to the country that my family's from, Dominican Republic, I would get targeted harassment strictly for being, like, very mixed looking, despite the fact that, like, I'm half Afro, half Taino. So, like, the mixture kind of makes it, if they even exoticize me in my own country, sort of. So, like, that. And then, like, going across the seas, I can't, though the way I look in other countries, my sisters would not get treated the same way as me.
Right.
Because they look darker, like, whatever.
And that's interesting. That's very interesting. And somebody asked me the other day, like, so what will be our cure to racism? And my general conversation, I gave them one word, and that one word was love, right? From a Christian standpoint, the only way to overcome anything, and the only way to overcome any kind of argument, any kind of hate, is love. I mean, from a Christian standpoint, I personally believe that Jesus going on the cross was the ultimate sacrifice of love. Yeah. And there were people who, per se, did not like him because of where he was from, I mean, somebody even quoted that said, "Could anything good come out of Nazareth?" Right? And from that perspective, like when the question was asked to him, what are the greatest of commandments? He said that the number one is you should love God with all thy heart, right?
Yeah.
And the second of those great commandments was to love thy neighbor as thyself. And that's a place where I'm really trying to get to. Like, I can't say I'm 100% there, right? I'm probably, if I had to say, be honest with myself, I'm probably like 60% there, right? Because
Yeah.
there's times when people make you mad and you be like, nah, absolutely not. Or if somebody say something to offend you and you be like, okay, it's get back time. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So for me, I'm trying to get to a place where generally I like treat everybody as if I would want myself to be treated. And that's across the board. Like, that's with everything. Like people, and it's funny because I was just on the phone with somebody earlier and it was like, you always trying to look at the good things in everybody and you always trying to see the good in everybody. And I was like, yeah, because, and I think me and you was talking about this earlier, Disco, like I literally I believe in the concept that Maya Angelou used to say, I have a saying where she said, if a person shows you who they really are, believe them, right? How can they show me who they really are if I don't even give them opportunity to come into my space or to show me who they are, right?
Yeah.
And that's the perception in which I come from.
So I'm from New York. You already know, like
Brooklyn, right?
No, Queens. Do not
Same.
ever tell me.
Queens, New York.
So I have a tendency, like out here, it's considered nice to like talk to your cashier. I hate that. I hate small talk. I think it's a waste of time. Like you're busy asking me about something that you really don't even care about. And I get out here that it's like, it's the nice thing to do. But in New York, it's considered rude to hold up the line by having chit chat.
Right.
So like, I also understand like people come from a different space than I do, a different upbringing. Like a lot of people look down on where I come from, like the the apartments I grew up in. A lot of people look down on that. So when they talk to me and they see like I can form a sentence without an accent, they kind of like, they're like, I never would have guessed. And it's like, it's really shady because at the end of the day, like, regardless of where I come from, who I'm presenting to you is who you need to understand and like respect.
Right.
So
it goes back to the whole perception that you have to give a person opportunity, right? And that's where I'm at. Like
Yeah.
I'm at that whole, I don't care what people have said about me. I don't care what people do about me. I don't care. Like
Yeah.
it's people on Facebook who go off on our organization, right? I would love to meet some of those people and I really don't care, right? Because at the end of the day, for me, is I remember a pastor preached a sermon and the title of the sermon was you have to love the hell out of them, right? And even when people don't understand it, I personally just feel like love goes places that I can't go, right?
Yeah.
That even when people don't understand me or people think that that my views are radical, right? If I love the heck out of them, love is what's going to keep them up in the middle of the night thinking about what I've said, right? And one of the things that we've been talking about too is that I am for protesting out in the streets when it's required, right? Peaceful protesting out in the streets when it's required, right? But at the same time, I am also for sitting down, having dialogue with people who disagree with me, right?
Yeah.
And this is something that we're doing even on May 18th. Like, I want there in Gwinnett County, I want pastors who do not agree with us to come out to the event that we're having at Tabernacle International Church because I need to hear their views. Like,
Yeah.
for example, we were talking earlier about a lot of times in the office, I'll come to you guys and when I came about my discussion about racism, like everybody in the office, this goes looking at me like, nah, you tripping. I mean, they went down the business, read me the Webster's dictionary term, and I stood there and I listened and I took it in. And at the end of the day, even though they didn't completely change my opinion, they did bring up some valid points and it readjusted the way I looked at some of the things, right?
Yeah.
The one thing that I've come to realize is that you're not going to understand or be able to see somebody's opinion unless you sit down and hold a conversation with them. And I'm open for it. Like, I'm open, even though me and Governor Kemp may not see eye to eye on everything, I would love to sit in the room. And we've been trying to sit in the room and hold a conversation with him, right? I would
Yeah,
love to
we
sit
have.
down and talk to him about why, like, for example, yesterday, most people don't even know this, but under the radar, Governor Kemp just signed a bill yesterday, literally saying that we cannot in no way, fashion, or form in the state of Georgia reallocate any dollar that is for law enforcement in any type of way. And he did that thinking that he's going to get rid of the whole defund the police aspect of what everybody's arguing about. Let's be honest, defund the police. And I don't know, I mean, defund the police was a movement started off the principle of not really eliminating the police. We all agree that we need our police department, right? And there's nobody in disagreement that if somebody breaks into your house, you're not going to call your neighbor. You want the police to come because you want them to find who did it, and you want them to prosecute them or whatever the case may be, right?
Right.
So defund the police does not mean eliminate the police department or get rid of them. It means that we have to look at the way we allow them to use their budget, reallocate some of their budget,
right.
Move some of the things that we address in our Fair Justice Act. Reallocate the way we use the funding. Like, for example, I talked to a lot of police officers. And a lot of them say that most of their jail space is used up by people who are mentally challenged, mental health cases, right? And why can't we reallocate some of that money and hire actual professionals to work for the police department so that when they're going out to deal with a person who may have a mental health issue, that there's a counselor, somebody who really knows what it's like to de-escalate somebody who may have a mental health challenge and actually work with them and maybe, get them into treatment or something like that. I mean, it doesn't mean get rid of the police department. I mean, what bothered me and what was a big eye opener for me was when Obama was president, and I don't remember whose death it was, but I think it was St. Louis, Missouri, where they had the protest and the police had tanks.
Are you talking about Mike Brown?
What city was that again?
That was in Ferguson.
Ferguson, right? Missouri.
They had tanks.
They had tanks out there on the streets against citizens, peaceful protesters. Right? And
that's
we
when it
seen
went
that.
violent,
But I'm just saying, we seen that in DC. If we got money to buy tanks from the military, because then we know the government ain't just giving away stuff, right? If we got money to buy tanks from our military and put in our police department, I understand. We have to do everything we can to protect our officers and those who serve in law enforcement. I get that, right? But tanks on our own citizens, we use tanks in war.
No.
We use tanks in war.
It's so reckless to be giving them the power that the military holds because the military training is completely different.
Right.
In military, they know what's a war crime and what's not. And like I say this because my fiance was in the military. So he's told me like, oh, that breaks the Geneva contract, this, that, and the third. Whereas officers, if we're arming them like we would SWAT or anything like that, like if we're arming them further than we should be, at that point it's a problem because we've seen how trigger happy they are and how they kind of have a tendency to jump the gun because they're not actually prepared for the situations we're putting them in.
Right. And I think I was talking to somebody recently who was in the military. I think it was my uncle. And he stated to me, like, in the military, if they wanted to actually get someone, right, if their goal was to go in and get them for intelligence, they know how to go in without killing that person to get them out, right? And this is one of the things I think we bring up in the Fair Justice Act is that we need to talk about if officers, it seems like, are only trained to kill. I was at an event, I'm not going to say the county I was in, but they were giving us a tour of a facility they had, and they was showing us like this one room where they have like this different scenarios, and you go through the scenarios. But I realized
the new one that was built.
I'm not mentioning the county. So I realized that in particular that the only two options they gave you as a weapon to use was a gun and like a shotgun or something like that, right? But they didn't train me like to pull out a taser.
Right.
They didn't train me to pull out mace, right? And we give the officers all these different resources, but yet the only thing that they're trained to use is their gun, right? When they're in a situation where sometimes that you can de-escalate in other ways, right?
Yeah.
And the question I have is like, when we think about officer training, we have to get to a better place of training our officers not so much to kill, right? But training our officers to detain, right? Yeah. Train our officers to de-escalate. And we have to discuss, but at the same time, we have to be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
And we have to agree, like, there's times where officers have had shootings, and I have completely disagreed with the public because if you read the law, the officer was justified by law for what they did, right? If that's the case, if the law gives them the right to kill a person, or the law says that, hey, if the person does this, you have the right to use deadly force. The problem is probably the officer, right? We get that, right?
But that's not really the main problem. The problem is the policy.
Yeah, so personally, I have problems with these policies when like you see instances of mass shootings where they're able to detain, typically, unless the goal is suicide at the end, where they're able to detain these mass shooters, like the school in Florida, where they were able to detain the child who was like shooting. But then you see like in these day-to-day actions, they shoot minority people faster than they do non people of non-color.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, we have plenty of examples, but and once again, but then too, we have to be realistic and say that police shootings happen to. I mean, there are white people who get shot by the police too. They just the reason why it's not such an uproar, it's not that they're not getting shot; it's that they live through it.
Yeah. Yeah, they always it seems like
not always. We won't say always.
Typically they live through it. And it's starting to seem more like this reminds me of a case I saw in Florida where a county was training their officers to hit dark black men with dreads. That's what they were shooting. That's what their shooting practice was. So like, you know how when you go to a gun range, they like that sheet of paper, their sheet of paper was black men and their goal was to shoot them in the head. And like, it was like this big thing. I think it was like between 2013 and 2016, because I wrote an entire essay on it during that time in my life. Where they were doing that and like it was found to be like very unlawful. I'm not sure if that's still the practice, but there's articles on it. And this was in Florida recently. So, you know, I feel like they're being trained to kind of target minority people in a different way, depending on the county and like all of that.
Hey, did you get that picture I asked you for? You working on it? Nah, it's cool. I was just going to throw it out there because I'm going to go to that subject in a minute. Okay. But listen, so real quick though, so let's shift that, right? So we're a Georgia-based organization. We know that. We're in Georgia, but we do connect with other organizations throughout the country. One of the things that has recently bothered me so much is that we know Georgia was the first one to pass this voter rights, whatever they want to call it. Some people call it voter restriction vote. Some people call it voter protection law.
Yeah.
Georgia led the way, right? We seen it was a lot more radical. People got out. We protested. They skimmed it back a little bit. Right after Georgia passed it, Florida just recently passed a law on this week, and it got signed into law, I think Thursday, right?
Yeah.
And in the middle of the night, Texas decided they don't want to be left behind. So at 3 a.m. in the morning, they passed their voter law, their new voter law, and it's probably going to get signed into law. What do you think is the passion around voting right now? Like people, and the crazy thing is that Florida actually literally in February, the governor of the state of Florida literally stood up and said that Florida had the most secure election, that they had the most people get out and vote they've ever had before. Yeah. And the only difference between Florida and I would say Georgia is that Florida was run by somebody in particular and Georgia was run by the opposite person. Like, what's the problem?
I think it has to do with like that buzzword of voter fraud. Like it's such a whistleblower type of term. So like all that cries for like, oh, Trump was actually elected and like all the recounts and all the votes being thrown out. And then it coming out that I think it was like 1,000 votes in Georgia that they found that were fraud were actually for Trump. So it just kind of like that whole whistleblower moment of like, oh, people are committing fraud via voting. But like what we're seeing with these voter rights bills is that they are kind of cutting back the ability for minority and blue collar workers to actually vote and exercise their right. By cutting back on absentee voting in the middle of a pandemic, it's just kind of reckless in my opinion, because not everybody can get the vaccine. Not everybody wants to get the vaccine. So it's just kind of...
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that everybody couldn't get the vaccine, right?
Not everybody.
Everybody wants to get the vaccine.
A lot of people do want to, but like my aunt, for instance, she lives in New York. She's about to be 60-something. She literally cannot get the vaccine because she had Guillain-Barré. And that's it affects her nervous system and it affects like all of that. So she wants to get the vaccine, she just can't.
Yeah, and
they don't recommend it for her.
The vaccine is a whole nother conversation for me, as you know. But since you brought it up, might as well dig into it a little bit. So I know you just got your second shot.
I sure did.
And how did that go for you?
I wanted a nap. I was so glad Ari came with me. I'm so glad he came with me because like we pulled off into a racetrack right after, and I was like, "You take the wheel. I just want a Gatorade."
But that was yesterday, and you're feeling better today, right?
I feel better. My arm is still sore. This is the side. So I'm a side sleeper. So this is the side I sleep on, and that's the side that they got. And it's still sore, but I didn't get the cold reaction. Like Ari, he's had COVID, so with the first shot he had like the cold throwback, and I didn't get that at all with either shot. Right. I just had a really sore arm.
Yeah, and for me it was the same thing. Like I have COVID twice last year, and then when I got my second shot, I was out of it. And I think I still came to work and I laid down for like hours at a time, and I'll be on like having a meeting on the phone and be like, "Oh, okay, I'll be up in 1 second." But at the end of the day, I survived it. And more so recently, I had to deal with something that still hunts me a little bit. But my own uncle passed away from COVID, and I sat in the room with him when they removed him from the ventilator. And currently, I have a member of my church who is fighting the same fight, but is fighting, doing a really good job. So I mean, I'm an encourager of the vaccine. I think that anybody who can get it should get it.
Absolutely.
And I don't care what race you come from, what background you come from. I think that if for people who have lost family members, for people who early in the pandemic could not even be in a room with their family, like I think back to, even though I'm saddened by my uncle's passing, right? I'm grateful because a year ago, I wouldn't have been able to be in that room. Like he would have had to pass away by himself. I wouldn't have been able to go see him. I wouldn't have been able to, I probably would have been able to talk to him through FaceTime. That's if a nurse was nice enough to do FaceTime for me. So
it's just so
it's changed. Yeah, it's changed so much. And you got to think about over 500,000 people. How many people at this point have died from COVID?
Yeah.
I mean,
500,000.
And then you think about some of those, and it's the part that tears me up too. Like I think about tomorrow being Mother's Day, and there's some people who parents, mothers, fathers, children
were lost. Yeah.
Could have been here tomorrow, should have been here tomorrow, and they won't be. And that's something that my heart goes out to like everybody, because I personally know how it feels now. Yeah, so I mean, I'm definitely in favor of the COVID vaccine. Let's shift back to Georgia politics a little bit. So we have the great mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms. There she goes, right there in the corner, who has decided that she will not be running for re-election. What do you think about that, Leslie?
I enjoyed her as a mayor. I used to work in the West End, and so like all the work she was doing to bring it up and coming was really nice. And to like update it and modernize it. But I'm kind of sad because she was very inspirational as a woman. You know, I'm a law school hopeful. So people don't even notice about her, but Keisha Lance Bottoms, interestingly enough, was the first woman or first mayor who's been in all three branches of government. She was a judge in Fulton County. So she was in the judicial branch. She was in the legislative branch because she was actually, I think she was a commissioner or something like that, too. I believe so.
Something along those lines. But then she made it to the mayor's office, which put her in the executive branch. Yeah. So she's been in all three branches of government in Fulton County. That's pretty unique. Yeah, and it's pretty cool.
She's very inspirational in my opinion.
And she's a FAMU graduate. I just want to put it out there.
So yeah, she's very inspirational, and I believe, like, I wish the best for her going forward. I heard rumors that she might be tapped or something. I heard rumors.
For all those worried about Keisha, however I point to the picture, which way is it? That way?
That way, yeah.
She's going to be okay.
I mean,
she's going to be okay, and I don't think at any point her voice is going to be dimmer than this. I don't think at any point she's going to stop protesting those things that she believes in. I think that she has a bright future in front of her, and I think that she's going to continue to go forward, whether you agree with her politics or disagree. She's a phenomenal person, has done phenomenal things, and I wish her the best. So kudos to Keisha. I mean, she died.
Absolutely.
Of Atlanta. So I know we've kind of jumped around a little bit, but I do want to go back to, I think that ties back into our Fair Justice Act. Keisha did a lot of things down in the city of Atlanta, and we're actually working with Vice Chair Hall now to do some things in Fulton County. The one thing I want to point out too is that a lot of counties, as we reach out to them, they say, well, do you work in this county? Do you work in our county? We can only do what you guys allow us to do in your county, right?
Yeah.
We are an organization that's not really geared around going in and just taking it over. We're an organization that's really geared around going in and partnering with other people to help support them, help support their vision, to be a part of what they're doing, as long as it's aligned with things that we're doing, right? And we are working tirelessly to try to do that. From a day-to-day perspective, like, what is it that we do here at BlackPush? From your perspective, I know what I do. From your perspective, what is it that we do here?
I know what I do too. I feel like, well, not what I feel like, but I know that we do a lot of, it seems like we do a lot of emailing and calling back and forth, but really we're trying to set up these kind of movements and push forward change, ultimately, in my opinion, is what we're doing. I feel we're setting ourselves up to be very monumental in terms of like changing our communities, not only our community, but Paulding County, DeKalb.
Right.
We're working tirelessly. Like, we just connected with a group called Not This Time in Seattle, who has passed legislation in their state over police force funding.
Right.
So, like, I feel like we're trying to make big change, not only in our community, but in the entire state of Georgia and hopefully the nation.
Right. And that's what we are. I mean, that's exactly what we are. It starts, the Bible says that charity first starts at home. So I believe that I got to start at home. And Georgia right now is my home. But I'm just as passionate about Florida as I am about Texas, as I am about, like, I think, so part of the last video I think we're going to end up sharing is that I told you, did you send him the picture of the flag?
No.
Oh, I wish I would have. But no, so actually I'm going to send it to him while we are discussing this.
Okay.
And maybe he can get it via email and maybe he can add it in. Because I want to show this picture and I want to tell the story of kind of why this picture is so important to me and where the inspiration of it came from. So I'm going to email it to you, Disco, right now. And hopefully you get it in time. But hey, I just emailed it to him. Anyway. But one of the things that I'm learning and as we get ready to close out, like, I know we talked about a few different things, and thank you again for being willing to come. I emailed it to you. I know. I emailed it to you. But I mean, one of the things reason why I wanted you to come on is because sometimes I think that people they take our name and they perceive us to be wrong. They take us as just been this movement that only cares about things that only cares about things that impact the Black community. And part of that could be I will be honest.
Be the name.
No, not even the other name, but part of it is to our own way of how we have marketed ourselves on social media. Let's be honest. We're going to do a better job about that, right? But so he has it up. Yeah. So this, for anybody who does not know, is my house. There we go. And this flag sits in front of my house. So the other day, it was wrapped around the pole. As some of you guys know who stay in Georgia, we had like a really bad storm in Georgia. And this flag got wrapped around that brown thing that you see over there. And when I was taking it, like pulling it apart to put it back out, I realized that the flag was ripped. As you guys can see, like, it was ripped, it was torn. And I was going to take it down, and something spoke to my spirit and said, no, learn from it, right? Learn from it. And what I looked at the flag and I realized is that, like, this is America right now. Literally. We're in the middle of a storm. We've been through a storm. We're still in the middle of a storm, from social injustice to racism to whatever you want to call, right? From the pandemic, from people losing their jobs, from us arguing about whether or not we should give people unemployment to whether or not, all this crazy stuff, right? We're in the middle of a storm. We're in the middle of a very tense situation. But the part that caught my attention about this flag is that even though it had been through a really bad storm, and you guys who stay in Georgia know, like, it was really bad for 2 days straight. It was ripped, it was torn, but it wasn't irreparable, right? And that's the part that really caught me. I was like, God, wow, you're so awesome. It wasn't irreparable. And what I realized that if I could take the time to learn how to sew, first off, and if I can get a sewing kit, I could easily restitch this, but it took me to train. It's going to take me training, and it's going to take me to put in some work. And one of my neighbors asked me to remove it down, or am I going to remove it down? I told him no, because I want to be constantly reminded of why I wake up every day and come into work, is to help take that brokenness and make it better. And that for me is important. And that for me is a sign. That for me is a symbol. So that flag I mean, it gives me chills every single time I think about it. Every time I pull up at my house, it just reminds me of why I get up and why I do what I do. So yeah, that's who we are. That's what we stand for. You can get rid of that picture. Thank you, Disco. But that's who we are, and that's who we stand for. And I wish, like, at the end of this, I really wish that people who watch our podcast, people who play a part in the videos that we have going on, people who respond to a post that we put up or a quote that we put out, got to know who we are. Got to know the type of people we are, and got to know, I mean, and at the end of it, regretfully, got to know me and stop being so judgmental. And there was, I mean, there was one more topic I was going to bring up, but I'd rather, I mean, God may have allowed us around that time for a reason. But I want people to be reminded that as much as we seem divided, that there's more that brings us together than what tears us apart. And I do believe in that. I do believe that there's more that brings us together than what tears us apart. So I want to encourage people that, hey, if you take the time out to get to know us, take the time out to get to know me, and you'll see that at the core of who I am, I just really want to make this country a better place than the way I came into it with.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know that you guys want to do the same thing, right?
Yes.
I want to encourage everybody before we close out, please go to our website, www.BlackPush. That's BlackPush. I'm trying to move my head to see if my head is so big. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's how you called you blow properly.
It is. Blackpush.org. There we go. Blackpush.org, and go to www.newbiecorp.org to see what we have going on. We have a lot of good stuff going on in the month of May. We have a lot of big things going on in the month of May. And want you to be a part of, you are a youth and you're between the age of 13 and 18, and you want to continue to dialogue about what you can do to stand up for social things that you have, or social injustice issues, or you want to learn how successful people have gotten to where they're at. Like, join us on May 22nd between the hours of 6, I think it's 6 to 8.
5 to 7.
5 to 7. Correct me, please. Go to our website and go to our, I mean, you can get it. The ticket is free, but you have to register through Eventbrite. I think we have our goal is to have at least 1,000 people on. And we're going to be broadcasting this with different churches we partner with already. We're going to be doing this big, so please come out and join us for that event.
It's going to be live on Facebook and Zoom,
and it's going to be on Disco 100 Radio on YouTube. We talked about it already.
I told you.
Oh wait, well it is. We'll figure it in. But still, it'll be live on our Facebook page. It'll be live via Zoom. So please come out and join us on May 22nd. For that event. Thank you, Leslie, for being that. And I'm super excited because you're going to be the host of that event. So this will be her first time hosting the event with us. So kudos to Leslie. You have something else you want to throw in there before we show this last video?
Nope.
All right. I just want to say this. I know it's going to be in the video, but to every mother out there, those who are here with us and those who are not here with us, happy Mother's Day. From our organization to you guys.
Yeah.
If I could send everybody roses, I would. Obviously, I don't know everybody, but for those who are here and for those who still have your mothers living with you, my grandma used to say it best: give them the roses while they yet live. So, happy Mother's Day to each and every single mother out there. And for those who have lost mothers, and for those who this may be your first or second or third or fifth, 10th year without your mother, know that my heart is definitely with yours. Even though my mother's still here, I lost my grandmother, so I know the feeling, but my heart is definitely with yours. So happy Mother's Day. Enjoy it. Let's continue to be blessed. Let's continue to bless other people, and let's continue to love each other. Until next week, we will see you next time.
Hey everyone, it's Sean Smith from BlackPush and Newbie Corp. Hey everyone, it's Sean Smith, and I'm the president and CEO of two nonprofits called BlackPush and Newbie Corp. Today I wanted to just reach out to all the mothers just to say happy Mother's Day to each and every single one of you. Just to let you know that we love you and we appreciate everything that every one of you do. But also at the same time, we just want to take the time out to actually be sentimental and to grieve with those who will be celebrating this Mother's Day year without their mother. For those who have lost mothers due to COVID, for those who have lost mothers just due to natural causes, to other sicknesses and diseases. We want to wish you guys a happy Mother's Day and wish your mothers who have passed and gone along before you a happy Mother's Day as well. I would be remiss if I did not point out some of the very women in my life who have been very impactful. Of course, my mom, my cousin, the women who have helped raise me, who have passed away, my grandmother, my Aunt Sarah, my Aunt Pat, so many more. I just want to encourage you guys as we get ready to celebrate the season, as we celebrate life and the preciousness of life, that we don't take for granted the people that we still have around us this year. Love your mothers, hug them close. My grandma used to always have a saying where she said, "Give me my roses while I yet live." Let's make sure that this Mother's Day we give our roses to those who deserve them. We give them to the mother of our kids, the mother of our children, our sisters, those who we work with, just all in general. Let's just make sure we want to wish everyone a happy Mother's Day. Every single person, I don't care where you come from or what background you come from our organization to yours, happy Mother's Day. But I just wanted to close out by saying, we love you guys. We want everybody to celebrate. We want everybody to appreciate this aspect or this thing we call life. And we just wanted to just wish everyone a happy Mother's Day. Every mother out there who's here with us in the physical and who have gone before us in the spirit realm. We appreciate you. We love you. God bless you and your family. And these are a few of the women who have been impactful to my life.